You can learn by doing, but while you're doing, you have to be learning.
Even this podcast, every single time we record a podcast, I become a little bit more comfortable on camera.
Yep.
I become a little bit more comfortable on hearing my own voice. And I think I've become a little bit better on the podcast.
Absolutely. You are going to suck when you start something, no matter how much training you have. If you go to a surgeon and it's like, hey, this is my first day as a full-fledged surgeon, I'm going to cut the top of your skull off and I'm going to operate on your brain.
I'm going to run.
Like, no. I'm going to take the person who's done that a bunch of times before, right? I don't want the person who has just finally earned the badge of full-fledged, I'm no longer, doing my residency or whatever. Like, that's not who I want to operate on my brain. So no matter how much you study, you're actually also coming in still as, I still have to learn while I'm doing it.
Welcome back to this week's podcast where we're talking about learning by doing.
Learning by doing, learning while doing. And if you haven't yet, by the way, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, whether
please.
You are watching on YouTube and there's a little button right there to click down below, or if you're listening on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure to subscribe. And if you like what you hear, tell us by giving us a little star rating or a little thumbs up or whatever kind of, rating system. You can even drop a note and say what you like and
What you don't like.
Yeah. That way we can learn while we're doing. But now let's step back on this one,
Okay.
because you can learn by doing, but while you're doing, you have to be learning. Because you can also say, you can go out and there are people who spend their whole lives doing things and never getting very good at it.
Yeah.
Right? There are people who've been married 7 times and they're going to
my
get
God.
divorced again, right? It's like, oh, well, I've been married 4 times. I should be good at this by now. No, they're still miserable at it, right? Or there are people who, are whatever, maybe they're a builder, they pour concrete, and they just never got very good at it. They just don't care enough.
I think the reason that they never get good enough is because they are not learning from other people who are good at it. Like, I believe in learning from people who are better than you in the field that you are in. So if it's a business, not even a business, let's talk about diet, like getting advice if you're trying to diet from someone who's overweight, it's probably not the person you should be asking for advice.
Yeah.
I think you should be engaging in trying to lose the weight and also maybe ask someone else who is in shape and not just someone who's in shape. Because if you're talking to my younger sister who can eat so much food and not gain
An ounce.
She's the wrong person to be asking advice for, because she's just going to be eat 2 plates. You will not gain weight. You will not gain weight.
Definitely go back for thirds. It works like a charm. Look at me.
Look at me. So that is the wrong person to be asking for advice. You need to go to someone who has gone through maybe having gained the weight and lost the weight and ask them. You got to find the right person to ask. Mm-hmm. For me, in terms of business, it's you could go to a former president and be how did you start your business? I hear you're a good businessman. He's just going to be I got a small donation of $1 million. Yeah. That is a very different business. For me, I feel I have to find people who look like me, almost. People who are in financial place where I'm at. And those are the people that I should be asking advice from.
Yeah.
You got to find the right people.
Right. So, but then what you're saying is actually not learning by doing, but learning while doing.
Correct. I think you need to do both.
Well, you can't learn while doing if you're not doing it. It's a little bit of a distinction.
Okay.
But I think, there are many things that I'm trying to think of an example of, there are people who cook. That's a perfect example. People cook all the time, right? And they cook every day, but they're not very good cooks, right? They're just not a very good cook, but you do it every day. And the kids are just whatever, okay, we got to eat this food because this is what mom or dad made for me.
That's going to be me.
And it's just not very good. You didn't necessarily learn by doing because you're doing it, but you're still not learning or improving because you just kind of do it, right? And that can easily happen in relationships. It can happen in your job. I know what to do. I just put this in here and I do that all day, every day. And someone writes me a check every 2 weeks and that's fine. But the learning while doing, I think, separates these two things of that just by doing it, you're not necessarily learning. But it's that by doing it, you can actually then choose to learn.
To keep learning.
And I want to put that back into our relationship, is that both of us had long-term relationships before this. And one of the things that we both did was we were really actively looking for how do we improve. And one thing that worked really well, and a lot of times when people break up, they look and say, this person was crazy, this person was narcissistic, this person was selfish, this person was whatever I want to look back and blame my ex for. Something that we did was to actually say, what did I do? And on the very
without
first...
blame.
Without blame. But on our very first date, you brought up, so like with your ex, what did you do wrong? What was your part in the breakup? That was your first question.
I think because most of the time when you hear about breakups, it's always about the other. You know, they did this. They were selfish. They did that. And it's like, wait, but they were not in a relationship by themselves. You were in it, you know? And so for me, when I talk to people, it's like, it's not like I want you to blame yourself, but I want to just hear like what your responsibility was in that breakup.
Yep.
And so I was like, I don't want to hear about your ex. I just want to hear what you did. And I think that was so important because we both could take responsibility in how we contributed to the breakup of our other relationships.
Yeah, right, exactly. So kind of like now transporting that and coming into this moment, I think one of these other questions would be, so what do we do besides reading books together and individually on our relationship?
We have a lot of sex.
We have a lot of sex, so that's a good thing to do.
Are we learning by doing?
Do we learn by doing sex?
Are we getting better?
I think Mike Pence would love our cabin. We seem to have flies joining us today, so unfortunately Mike Pence will not be here to appreciate it with us. So yeah, we learn by doing sex. Which is actually a perfect example. Most people do learn by having sex. It's better, that's another example of, I think, learn while doing sex. Because great example, you can just have sex. Like we pretty much know how to do it, right? It's like this biological thing. I can figure this one out. But that's not really good enough most of the time. It's not going to necessarily lead to total sexual fulfillment unless you're actually actively engaging, learning while doing.
Yeah. And when I think about like my sex life in my 20s and my sex life in my 30s, like it's just so much better.
Yeah. And good news for anyone else who's in their 30s, you can look forward to being even better when you're 40s.
I know. I asked someone who was in their 40s and they were like, it gets better. And then she was like, I actually heard from a woman who was in her 50s that it got even much better. So I'm just like...
Now, if that trend continues, I cannot wait to be 100. But what else do we do? Well, I'll go ahead and answer this first thing, because one of the things is like with our Lover's Journal, which is a journal that we've been developing, and that really takes the work that we do and has kind of codified it. We do different things specifically for each other. We reflect with our journaling to be like, so that therefore we're almost like catching issues before they arise sometimes, or we're also developing the capacity to deal with the issues when they arise, so that the challenges that we've had, and we definitely have challenges, we're normal people, but the challenges feel so manageable. Like even in our worst challenges have felt very manageable.
Yeah, and I think they feel manageable because we've done so much work around our relationship. So there's the journal. Like part of like us developing this journal was like, it was inspired by watching you journal, and I'm not someone who journals, I like prompts, and I was just like, it just makes it easier for me to journal. And I was like, I want to put some effort into like my relationship in journaling. And so I was like, I was like, Matthew, I think we should create something that would be so helpful in order for me to journal. And that's how this journal came about. Yeah. And so I've developed this practice of journaling that I didn't have before because you do it, you know, And the other thing that we do together as a couple is meditation, which wasn't something that I was actually doing a lot. You know, I was meditating here and there, but you've meditated on a regular basis for how long?
Well, off and on. I mean, it started when I was a teenager.
Wow.
I can't say I've been always steady, but, certainly the last 5 or 6 years been, very regular. And since I was a teenager, I'd go through spurts where I was very good about it, either a few times a week or daily. And then the way life goes, you're tired and you're working 2 jobs and whatever else going on. And somehow I managed to let, meditation be, take the back seat at times. But now it's something that we also do as a time to kind of create that space. When we really make sure we create that space, meditation is certainly time for me, right? To kind of connect. But if I'm connected with myself and I'm more centered, I'm also less likely to be reactive or whatever, in our relationship. And I can just be a better person in our relationship.
Yeah. And it's also something that talk about like today's topic, learn by doing, is like, I sucked at meditation. I was just like, what am I supposed to do? Just sit here?
Everyone sucks at meditation when they start.
You know?
That's the point. That's the point.
I was like, what am I supposed to do? Just sit here and like, just, I don't know, not think. And
Good luck, by the way.
And after like consistently doing it for 3 years, I can say I can meditate for 20 minutes with no issue. Yeah. I've even like, now I can do an hour of meditation. It doesn't scare me so much if I have to sit there for an hour and meditate. And yeah, like I'm thinking about like all the things that you're saying. And I think even like going back to our journal is like, I think if I keep the habit of journaling every morning, like I'll just become good at it. Yep. If I became good at meditation, I guess I can...
You can get good at anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So learning by doing, learning through doing, particularly in relationships, and for and towards a healthy relationship is not only learning by doing, which we all do. We all get in relationships. We all have sex. We all do whatever. But then to actually not only learn by doing, but learn while doing, learn through doing. And mastery can certainly be either maybe not achieved, but we can get a little closer.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to us. Email us and let us know those things that you are learning or you've jumped into and you're learning by doing. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.